What if your greatest strength isn't what you say, but what you refuse to say? In a world where everyone scrambles to speak, to react, to prove, the man who pauses, who thinks, who stays silent with purpose becomes unstoppable. Yet most of us have been taught the opposite, that silence is weakness, that being loud is being powerful. And so we react fast, we speak without clarity, we burn energy defending things that don't even matter. But the Stoics knew the truth. Reason is power, silence is strategy, humility is strength. They believed that the highest form of self-control is not how loud you speak, but how deeply you think before you do. In this video, we're not just talking about being calm. We're showing you how to build emotional self-control, protect your energy, and lead with quiet confidence. You'll learn how to stop reacting to every attack, how to choose inner peace over ego, and how to train your mind to stay still, especially when the world pushes you to explode. You're not the only one who feels overwhelmed. You're not weak for wanting silence. You're wise for craving clarity. If you're ready to lead with reason, to master your emotions, and to let your silence echo louder than noise, stay with me. Like this video, subscribe for more, and share it with someone who needs the power of stillness today. This is the quiet path to dominance, and the Stoics walked it first. 1. Master self-control through strategic silence. You've seen it happen. Maybe you've done it yourself. A conversation turns sharp, a misunderstanding escalates, and before you know it, you've said something you wish you could pull back. But it's too late. The damage is done, not just to the relationship, but to your own inner peace. And for what? To win an argument? To prove a point that didn't need proving? Most men don't realize that the cost of a reaction is far greater than the moment of silence they refuse to take. That's where this begins, not with the noise of the world, but with your ability to withhold what doesn't need to be said. Stoic philosophy never taught that silence equals surrender. In fact, they saw silence as a discipline, a form of warfare. To stay silent when ego demands to speak is not passivity. It is precision. It means you've trained your mind not to react out of emotion, but to respond with clarity. It means you've chosen to control your reaction, not let the situation control you. Because the man who speaks too quickly gives away his strength, but the man who knows when to be still keeps his power intact. The modern world rewards fast talkers, hot takes, and people who fill silence with noise. But look closely. Are those men respected or just heard? There's a difference. Real strength doesn't come from volume. It comes from restraint, from the ability to step back instead of step up, especially when your pride is provoked. That's where most people fail. They confuse silence with weakness. They think not responding means they've lost. But ask yourself, have you ever truly felt proud of what you said in anger, or did you wish you'd waited? Imagine this. You're in a tense meeting. A colleague challenges your idea publicly. The room shifts, eyes turn, and you feel the heat rise. Your instinct is to defend, to speak quickly, to prove you're right. But instead, you pause. You let the silence hang, not out of fear, out of control, out of discipline. That moment shifts everything. The power dynamic changes because you didn't give them your energy. You kept it. And when you finally speak, you do so with weight, not with noise. That's self-control in real time. That's a quiet strength. Marcus Aurelius understood this deeply. He said, "You always own the option of having no opinion." That doesn't mean ignorance. It means wisdom. It means being unbothered by provocations, because your identity doesn't need defending. You are not obligated to react to anything that disrupts your peace. Silence becomes a shield, not to hide, but to deflect what doesn't deserve your energy. The mistake most men make is thinking that speaking up is the same as standing up. It's not. Stoicism draws a clear line. Just because you can speak doesn't mean you should. And the stronger the emotion, the greater the danger of saying something that betrays your deeper values. That's why silence, used with intent, becomes not just a tactic, but a philosophy of life. It separates the reactive from the rational, the impulsive from the powerful, and it protects what matters most, your character. So next time someone pushes your buttons, remember this. You don't need to prove anything. The need to win every exchange is a trap laid by the ego. Let it pass. Stay silent, not because you're afraid, but because you're grounded. Because your silence is not empty. It's full of control, full of direction, full of reason. Practice it. In your next disagreement, say less. Breathe more. Respond only when your heart is calm and your words are aligned with your purpose. That's not avoidance, that's a command. That's the quiet discipline that Stoics lived by, and that modern men must reclaim if they want to rise above the noise and lead with strength. 2. Let reason lead, not emotion. You feel the surge before you even realize it. A comment cuts too deep, a look that disrespects you, a decision that blindsides you. Your chest tightens, your jaw clenches, and without thinking, you're ready to react. The urge is fast, primal. Say something, anything, just to push back. But this is the moment that separates men who are led by emotion from those who are led by reason. And most never pause long enough to see the difference. We've been trained by the world to believe that instant reaction shows strength, that emotion is proof of authenticity. But Stoic thinking doesn't reward speed, it rewards clarity. The Stoics understood that raw emotion distorts truth, and unless you train your mind to filter reality through logic first, you will forever be a slave to your feelings. That is not power. That is a kind of quiet imprisonment. The most dangerous man in the room is not the loudest. He's the one who has mastered himself before confronting the world. Now imagine this. You're standing in your kitchen. Your teenage son storms in, throws a snide remark about how you never listen, then walks away. You feel the sting. You want to raise your voice. You want to put him in his place. But something in you catches. You remember, reacting now will only feed the fire. So you wait, you breathe, you let the wave pass. Later, you return with a calm voice, clear eyes, and a question that disarms the anger. What just happened? You led with reason. Not because you were soft, but because you were solid. That's the power of emotional self-control. And it's not built in dramatic moments, it's forged in quiet ones, when nobody's watching, when your ego is whispering, and you choose to listen to wisdom instead. Stoicism doesn't ask you to suppress your feelings. It asks you to question them, to examine their source, to pause long enough to separate the event from your judgment about it. Because what happened is neutral. It's your interpretation that makes it painful, insulting, and personal. Epictetus said it plainly. It's not things that disturb us, but our opinion about them. The mistake most people make is collapsing event and emotion into one experience. Someone disrespects you, so you must feel insulted. Something goes wrong, so you must feel defeated. But that's not Stoic, that's reactive living, and it steals your peace. To reclaim that peace, start by writing it down, one situation at a time. The event, your interpretation, the emotion it triggered. For example, he walked past me without saying a word. That's the event, your interpretation. He's ignoring me on purpose. The emotion, anger. Now look again. Maybe he was distracted. Maybe he didn't see you. The emotion didn't come from the action, it came from your assumption. That's where Stoic discipline begins. Not in the moment of conflict, but in how you choose to see what happens to you. When you lead with reason, you slow life down. You stretch the space between stimulus and response, and in that space, you get your power back. The man who leads with emotion may win the moment. The man who leads with reason wins the war. Because he doesn't burn bridges, he'll need them later. He doesn't trade dignity for dominance. He doesn't build strength on reaction, he builds it on reflection. So next time your pulse races, your hands shake, your mind floods with fire, do this. Pause. Write. Reflect. Ask yourself, is what I feel based on fact or on fear? Then speak only if your words serve truth, not tension. This is how Stoics train their reactions. And this is how you reclaim control in a world built on emotional chaos. Not by silencing your heart, but by putting your mind in command. 3. Choose reflection over reaction. When pride speaks, it doesn't take much. One insult, one smirk, one challenge, and suddenly you feel the heat rise in your chest. Your pride flares up like a reflex, demanding a quick response. You want to strike back, correct them, remind them who you are. It feels righteous, but that impulse, if left unchecked, is what keeps strong men stuck in small battles. Because pride doesn't seek peace, it seeks validation. It doesn't ask, is this worth it? It asks, will they respect me if I stay silent? And that's where many fall, mistaking reaction for respect and noise for influence. In truth, pride reacts, but reason reflects. Pride is loud. The reason is deliberate. Pride needs to win now. Reason waits and sees who lasts. Stoic philosophy doesn't tell you to suppress your pride. It tells you to master it, to turn that sharp energy inward, not outward, to let it become fuel for clarity, not ammunition for conflict. The moment you can see your pride rise and not obey it, you've gained an edge over 99% of men in the room. And it won't feel natural at first, because ego always comes dressed as strength. But it's not. It's noise, disguised as urgency. You might remember a time like this. A team meeting. A colleague undermines your suggestion in front of your boss. They smile while doing it, knowing it hits you where it hurts. Your competence, your reputation. You open your mouth to respond, heart pounding, but something stops you. You've been here before. You know where this road leads. So you breathe, you listen, you let the moment pass. Later, in a private space with clarity and precision, you speak not from pride, but from position. You didn't lose control, you earned it, you didn't react, you chose when to speak, and it changed everything. This is the core of Stoic restraint. Marcus Aurelius never taught avoidance. He taught command of the self. You have power over your mind, he wrote, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. It means knowing the battlefield is not in front of you, it's inside of you. That every confrontation begins in the soul before it shows up in the room. And the man who cannot be baited by his ego is the man no one can manipulate. Too often, we're conditioned to prove we're unshakable by being aggressive, by clapping back, by holding the final word. But there's a deeper strength, one that doesn't chase respect by fighting for it, but earns it in silence and timing. That strength is quiet, it's disciplined, it's surgical, and it always comes from reflection, not reactivity. When you pause, when you reflect, when you ask yourself, do I want to be right or do I want to remain whole? You've already won. Because you've shifted the goal from external domination to internal mastery. If you want to train that discipline, start by catching your pride mid-sentence. Write down a recent situation where you reacted too quickly. What was said? What emotion flared? What outcome followed? Then write how a delayed response or silence could have changed the energy. This isn't weakness. This is building emotional control. This is Stoic discipline in motion. And it matters because the cost of reaction is often clarity, and the price of pride is always peace. So when the next moment comes, when the insult lands, when the provocation rises, ask a stronger question than how do I win this? Ask, what does this require from the highest version of me? Then meet it with poise, with a pause, with silence if needed. Not because you're afraid to speak, but because you've learned not everything deserves your voice. That's the difference between a man who argues and a man who leads. In the end, nobody remembers the loudest man in the room. They remember the one who stayed calm when others lost control. So let your reason speak louder than your pride. Let reflection take the mic, and you'll never need to shout again. 4. Protect your energy by protecting your words. There's a kind of fatigue that doesn't come from labor, but from conversation, from unnecessary arguments, from repeated explanations, from defending yourself against things that never needed defending. You speak, they twist, you clarify, they misread, you justify, they dismiss, and each time you open your mouth in response, you lose something. Not your logic, not your dignity, but your energy, quietly, steadily. That's the price of engaging in every battle that calls your name. We live in a culture that glorifies instant reply, constant opinion, and public response. But Stoic discipline teaches the opposite. It teaches discretion. It teaches verbal restraint as a form of power, not passivity. It teaches that your words are currency, and if you spend them everywhere, you'll have none left when it truly matters. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If it's not true, don't say it. If it's not helpful, don't say it." Not because truth and help aren't important, but because anything less than that cheapens your voice. And in the Stoic world, your voice is not meant to be loud. It's meant to be clean, sharp, minimal, powerful. Imagine this. You're sitting in the living room and your sibling says something provocative at the dinner table. Maybe it's political, maybe it's personal. Everyone looks at you, waiting for your reaction. You feel the pressure to respond, to challenge it, correct it, educate them. But instead, you breathe, you listen, and you say nothing. Not out of fear, out of complete clarity that your peace is not worth that exchange. And in that silence, you win. Not the room, but your balance. That's what many fail to realize. Silence isn't surrender, it's selection. You're choosing not to leak your emotional energy on what doesn't serve you. You're choosing to let noise pass through you without creating an echo. You're choosing, as Epictetus taught, to distinguish between what you can control and what you must simply observe. And one of the things you can control always is your tongue. Most men mistake engagement for strength. They think the louder they speak, the more powerful they become. But look at the men who move quietly through chaos and remain grounded. They don't speak because they need to prove. They speak when their words build, not break. They speak with precision, not impulse. They don't spill their thoughts to be heard. They protect their thoughts to preserve their energy, and in doing so, they rise above the noise. You don't need to respond to every criticism. You don't need to justify your integrity to anyone who's already decided to misunderstand you. The Stoic mindset isn't about isolation. It's about conservation. It's about learning that energy is limited. And every time you defend something that never needed defending, you're giving your emotional reserves to people who can't hold it responsibly. To live this practically, try this. For one day, delay every non-essential response by 30 seconds. When someone sends a message that provokes, don't type back immediately. Sit with it. Reread it. Ask yourself, does this conversation elevate me or drain me? And when in doubt, don't reply at all. Not because you're retreating, but because you're rising above the bait. Let your words be like arrows. Quiet in the quiver, precise in release, measured in aim, and never wasted on targets that don't deserve them. Speak less means more. This is not silence out of weakness. This is silence born from emotional clarity, from mental stillness, from discipline over reaction. It is a man's way of protecting his energy from the fires that consume others. You don't need to outtalk anyone, just outlast them. You don't need to over-explain yourself. Just outgrow the need to be understood. Let your calm confuse the loud, let your peace offend the chaotic, and let your silence do what shouting never could, command real respect. 5. Let wisdom speak louder than ego. Pride never knocks. It bursts in. It takes offense fast, speaks even faster, and rarely waits for the facts. When ego leads the conversation, your mouth becomes a weapon, aimed at others, but often wounding yourself. The words feel urgent. You must reply, you must explain, you must defend your name, your opinion, and your worth. But when you follow that urge, what you often defend is not your values, it's your insecurity. What you protect is not your peace, it's your need to appear powerful. And in that performance, you lose your true strength. The Stoics warned of this trap. They knew that ego craves applause, but wisdom seeks alignment. That's the distinction. One demands to be seen, the other quietly observes. One lashes out to be right, the other holds silence to stay centered. Ego speaks for recognition. Wisdom speaks only when clarity demands it. And the difference between the two is not found in knowledge, it's found in discipline. Picture this. You walk into a meeting. Someone throws a passive-aggressive remark your way in front of everyone. Your name, your work, disrespected in public. Your chest tightens. You feel your jaw set. You want to correct them, fire back, take control of the room. But something steadies you. A deeper part of you recognizes the trap. You know if you speak now, you'll be speaking from hurt, not from truth. So you wait, you breathe, you speak later, not louder. And when you do, every word lands. You didn't let your ego speak. You let wisdom decide when and how, and it changes the outcome completely. Most people believe that silence means losing ground, that if you don't reply, you've been defeated. But silence, when used with intention, becomes a higher signal of strength. It tells the world you're not ruled by triggers, that your peace isn't at the mercy of petty words, and that your value doesn't come from defending it every time someone tries to take it. Ego wants instant vindication. Wisdom plays a longer game. Stoicism teaches that your reaction is always your responsibility. You can't blame others for provoking you. You control whether you take the bait. The stronger your urge to respond, the more likely it's ego, not principle, that's behind it. Epictetus said, "It is impossible for a man to learn what he thinks he already knows." That line burns the ego. Because ego is a full cup, it can't receive correction or pause or insight. But wisdom remains open, silent, curious, unthreatened. If you want to practice that kind of control, start with this one question. Before speaking in a moment of conflict, ask yourself, is what I'm about to say a response from truth or a reaction from pride? If it's pride, stay silent. Let it burn away. Let your stillness do the sorting. The truth you carry doesn't need to shout. It just needs to remain intact. When your identity is secure, your tongue gets quieter. You don't chase dignity, you stand in it. You'll begin to see how much space pride tries to occupy in your day. That urge to reply to a comment online. They need to clarify every misunderstanding. That desire to correct someone who misrepresents you. None of those moments requires your voice. What they require is restraint. And through restraint, you rise. Your words were never meant to be thrown out in emotional defense. They were meant to be forged in reason and released with intent. Let the world misread you. Let them misunderstand your silence. You don't need to correct every rumor to live in peace. What they say will fade. What you practice becomes who you are. Speak only when silence would cost too much. And even then, speak from a place beneath the ego, from a place of earned calm, not wounded pride. Because the quieter you become, the more clearly you lead. And the less you react, the more you own your response. That's not just wisdom. That's war, waged and won in stillness. 6. Train the pause. Turn reaction into reasoning. A sharp comment, a disrespectful tone, a delay that feels intentional. In the split second it takes for something to go wrong, your body often reacts faster than your mind. Muscles tense, breath shortens, thoughts speed up. Your instinct pulls the trigger, not of a weapon, but of a reaction. You feel the urge to respond, to fire back, to regain control. But that urge, left unexamined, is the beginning of regret. Because reactions born from emotion almost never reflect your best self. They reflect your untrained self. And the space between trigger and response is where all your power lives. Most men don't lose control because they lack strength. They lose it because they lack pause. That pause, the moment between offense and action, isn't just silence. It's training. It's a test. And it's where Stoicism begins. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." But that power doesn't appear in the heat of the moment by magic. It's practiced, rehearsed, conditioned in the quiet places before the world provokes you. You may have noticed it in daily life. You get an email that subtly disrespects your contribution to a team project. You feel the heat. You start typing fast, defensive, justified, and sharp. Then you stop. You save the draft. You walk away. And when you return 1 hour later, the storm inside has passed. You read your own words and realize that version of you was loud but not wise. You delete it. You write something measured, confident, calm. Not to avoid the issue, but to reflect a man who commands himself before commanding a response. This is how emotional control is built. Not through slogans or willpower, but through repetition. Through choosing to pause over performance. The world around you moves fast. News, opinions, texts, demands, they all come with urgency. But urgency is the enemy of clarity. And the Stoic mind doesn't live on impulse. It lives on intention. Most people believe that pausing is a weakness. That means you're uncertain. If you don't respond quickly, you've lost the moment. But quickness is not the same as sharpness. Fast reactions blur reality. Paused responses sharpen it. Because the man who pauses doesn't delay truth. He protects it. He doesn't run from conflict. He refuses to be driven by ego through it. Stoicism trains you to reframe every emotional spike as a mental drill. A test of your inner architecture. Can you delay for 5 seconds? Can you breathe before you speak? Can you hold back your need to correct, explain, or defend until your logic, not your wounds, shapes your words? If the answer becomes yes, even once, you begin the slow mastery of reaction. Start simple. The next time you feel triggered, pause. Say nothing for 30 seconds. If in conversation, let silence carry the discomfort instead of your voice. If in writing, don't send your first draft. Read it, sit on it, come back later. That small break isn't avoidance, it's authority. It tells your nervous system, we're in control now. And it teaches your mind that calm isn't the absence of conflict, it's a skill earned in the middle of it. The Stoics weren't emotionless. They were masters of timing. They knew that clarity comes not from resisting feelings, but from ruling them. That stillness under fire is not apathy, it's dominance. And those who lead with pause eventually lead with wisdom. So train that pause. Build space between what hits you and how you answer it. Protect that gap. That's your fortress. That's where your reason sharpens. That's where your legacy is shaped. Not in how fast you reply, but in how slowly, how clearly, how consciously you choose your next move. That's the edge, and you carry it in silence. 7. Create mental clarity through inner silence. Noise doesn't always come from the outside. Sometimes it's inside your own mind. The running commentary, the rehearsed arguments, the silent fears that echo louder than any voice in the room. And when your inner world is cluttered, even a whisper from the outside can knock you off balance. That's why Stoicism isn't just about controlling your temper in public. It's about creating stillness inside, where it counts most. Mental clarity doesn't happen by accident. It's a deliberate act of discipline. In a culture obsessed with reaction, commentary, and performance, the quiet man isn't invisible. He's immune. His strength doesn't come from what he says, but from what he refuses to carry. Silence for him is not absence, it's a strategy. It's the act of clearing the mind to let reason lead instead of emotion. And that kind of silence, it starts within. You might think being constantly connected makes you informed, aware, and in control. But the truth is, being constantly connected makes you reactive, distracted, and tired. Emotional fatigue doesn't just come from conflict, it comes from overstimulation, from filling every silence with sound. Every space with motion, every pause is with scrolling, and slowly, without noticing, you lose touch with your own thoughts. You don't think, you react. You don't choose, you drift. You don't respond, you explode. Now imagine a different rhythm. Imagine waking up in the morning and not reaching for your phone. Instead, you sit, no music, no news, just breathe. You write down 3 things you need to stay calm about today. You don't forecast the storm, you prepare the ground. You let your mind settle before the world speaks. That's not passive, that's powerful. You're creating inner order so external chaos can't dominate you later. Stoics knew that clarity was a product of stillness. Marcus Aurelius carved out time in the morning not to plan his empire, but to rule his own thoughts. He wrote to himself, not for the world, but to keep his soul aligned before the noise began. He understood what many modern men forget. If you don't lead your mind at the start of the day, the world will hijack it by noon. And when that happens, you're no longer responding. You're reacting to every signal, every slight, every shift in the wind. So how do you build this clarity? You practice solitude, not isolation. Solitude, the intentional withdrawal from noise to hear what actually matters. You give your thoughts room to land. You stop assuming every silence must be filled. You pause between tasks, not just to rest, but to recenter. This isn't a retreat. This is mental stillness training. And just like muscles, it grows stronger with use. In daily life, this looks simple, but isn't easy. During a heated moment, you pause, not just in speech, but in thought. You ask, what do I know for sure, and what is just emotion clouding my view? You train yourself to stay present, even when your ego demands a reaction. You don't chase every headline. You don't answer every call. You stay loyal to your focus, and that loyalty sharpens your vision. Mental clarity isn't gifted, it's earned. It's not about escaping life, it's about rising above the noise inside of it. The calmer your mind, the more powerful your decisions. The clearer your thought, the more impactful your silence. And the deeper your stillness, the stronger your leadership, especially when others lose theirs. So tomorrow morning, before the world starts speaking, don't check your phone, check your mind. Create 5 minutes of intentional silence. No input, just breathe. Just breathe, just awareness. Let the dust settle. Let the water clear. Then move forward, not with speed, but with direction. The kind of direction only silence can teach. That's where quiet confidence is born. And that's how Stoic men prepare to lead, not with noise, but with clarity no one can shake. 8. Respond with humility when your ego wants revenge. Anger doesn't begin with the insult. It begins with your attachment to how others should treat you. That's where the fire starts. Not in their words, but in your expectations. The belief that you deserve better, that they should have known better, You must defend yourself to be respected. And yet the Stoics taught the opposite, that what truly offends you is not their behavior, but your belief that it controls your worth. So when your ego screams for retaliation, the wiser man bows to reason and responds with humility, not because he is weak, but because he refuses to be ruled. In a dimly lit hallway after a long meeting, a junior colleague makes a sarcastic jab. You know it's meant to provoke. You know others heard it. Your ego rises like a wave, rehearsing comebacks, sharpening blame, preparing to reestablish dominance. But imagine this instead. You pause. You don't blink. You nod gently, say nothing, and walk away. Not with resentment, but with command. That moment is not submission. It is sovereignty. Because you didn't lose yourself to win a moment. You stayed intact while they cracked under pressure. That's discipline. That's power. People often mistake humility for self-erasure. But Stoic humility isn't weakness, it's restraint. It's a refusal to fight battles unworthy of your peace. When Epictetus was mocked for his limp, he said, "Shall I show you my stronger leg?" He didn't flinch. He didn't rage. He owned what couldn't be mocked. That is the clarity of someone who knows their worth doesn't depend on how they're seen. It depends on how they stand, quiet, grounded, unshaken. The mind wants revenge because the ego equates silence with defeat. But revenge is just a reaction, not a restoration. It binds you to their behavior and hands over your clarity like currency. Stoic response, on the other hand, is precise. It chooses which battles deserve your breath. It doesn't flinch at offense because it knows that retaliation doesn't heal, it delays. Silence becomes your armor. Humility becomes your blade. Because a man who needs to shout is still unsure of his stance. But the man who doesn't move, he is already unbreakable. In daily life, this translates to choices. Not grand ones, but small ones. A rude driver cuts you off. Do you chase with your horn or choose calm? A friend makes a passive-aggressive remark. Do you bite back or shift the conversation with poise? These are the moments where character is tested, not in words, but in restraint. And each time you hold back not out of fear, but out of alignment with your higher self, you train your mind to detach from emotional triggers. You reinforce control. You reclaim space between stimulus and response. That space is your kingdom. To respond with humility is not to deny injustice. It is to delay the desire to react and let reason rule first. You ask yourself, what does winning this moment cost? Is your peace for sale? Is your energy so cheap? The Stoics knew the answer. They didn't seek applause, they sought integrity, and integrity is built in silence. In the pause, in the look that says, I'm not here to perform, I'm here to remain. So the next time your ego demands a comeback, don't give it one. Give it silence, then watch what happens. The chaos passes. The insult fades, and you remain, still, intact. Superior not by force, but by refusal. That's how you win without speaking. That's how humility overcomes noise. That's how reason becomes your weapon and silence your final word. When the world pushes you to react, to defend, to fight for your image, choose stillness. Choose to lead with clarity instead of emotion. Because the greatest power doesn't lie in controlling others, but in mastering your own response. Today, we've walked through the power of restraint, the discipline of silence, and the strength of humility. These are not passive traits. They are active decisions practiced by those who no longer wish to be puppets of anger, ego, or chaos. When you respond with humility instead of vengeance, you step outside the trap. You break the chain of emotional reactivity and replace it with psychological clarity. The Stoics understood this well. They knew that emotional self-control is not about suppression, it's about selection. You don't respond because you're weak. You respond wisely because your peace is worth more than your pride. So begin small. Practice silence when your impulse screams to speak. Pause before replying to provocation. Breathe when your mind demands revenge. These are not easy acts, but they are transformative. They build your discipline like a muscle, your Stoic mindset like a shield. They give you back the one thing nobody can take from you, your inner command. Let this not be just an idea. Let it become a daily practice. Because self-mastery is not earned in grand gestures, but in quiet choices made over and over again. And if this message resonated with you, I invite you to share your experience in the comments. When did you stay silent, and did it give you power? How have you turned emotional chaos into control? Your story might help someone find their strength. And that, too, is a quiet kind of leadership. Stoic discipline, emotional self-control, inner peace, power of silence, Stoic mindset. Respond, not react, calm mind, humble confidence, mental clarity, protect your peace.